Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about basically my photography journey from start to finish, and I'm going to include a bunch of photos of, how I've grown and developed since my first photographs until like now. So when I started out doing photography, I was just kind of a hobbyist with my dad. He's also a hobbyist. He's in the film industry, and so he always had a camera and was doing landscapes and that kind of thing, and would do the occasional portrait, but mostly he did landscape photography, and that's what he really kind of enjoys. So we lived in Alberta, which is a very scenic place in Canada, and you'd have all these beautiful kind of grassy plains and the mountains and the rolling foothills and canola fields and just a lot of beautiful kind of scenery. So my dad would go out and do shoots, and occasionally I would go with him and we'd do kind of a father-daughter bonding thing. So that's kind of how I first started. But I wasn't really that into landscapes. Like, I didn't mind it, I enjoyed it enough. I had always been a very artsy kid, and so I really liked any sort of kind of visual art, and so photography was just another thing that I kind of enjoyed, and it was fun to do occasionally. And it was good to do with my dad because it was kind of a bonding thing. It wasn't until grade 10 that I really discovered my passion for photography. Up until then, it was only once or twice a year for the school photo contest or just for fun with my dad. But in grade 10, for the school photo contest, I decided that year that I was going to do portraits of my friends. So for the first category, I did a portrait of my dancer friend, and theme I think was objects in motion, so I really wanted to capture a motion shot of her. And then the other portrait that I did was of another friend of mine who is absolutely stunning and was totally my muse for the first year and a half of my photography life. And hers was, I think the category was primary colors, so I wanted to do something with a huge pop of red and with kind of blues and other tones in it as well, but red to be the really kind of focus. I think the one of my dancer friend actually won first place in its category, and it was really during those two shoots for the school photo contest that I kind of discovered photography truly and how amazing it could be. Photographing people is something very unique. There's this connection and there's a lot of energy coming from the other person, and I think as a photographer you're trying to do justice to them as people, not only as like physical objects, whereas landscapes you just try to capture the landscape in a beautiful way, whereas people, you definitely, I think, try to capture their essence as well, which is why I love portraiture so much. So after I discovered this passion for photography, that's when I started shooting more and more portraits of my friends and my family, mostly my friends, and that's when I started really looking into other photographers. And so this was a time when I did so much research, and that's how I stumbled upon conceptual photography. And that is where my photography just started taking off and being so creative, and where I really truly fell in love with it. I discovered photographers like Brooke Shaden and Christy Mitchell and David Talley, and their work was just so creative and emotive and beautiful, and I wanted my photography to be like that so badly. So that's when I started shooting two of my friends a lot. And I would throw them in bathtubs or make crazy hats out of cards or get them to lie on boxes to make them look like they were floating. This is when I started learning how to do all the crazy kind of conceptual photo manipulation in Photoshop, and I was playing around a lot with different techniques and stuff that I was learning online because I'm pretty much mostly self-taught. I always had great gear because of my dad, and he kind of taught me the basics as far as ISO and aperture and shutter speed, that kind of thing, but it was the internet that really taught me how to be a good conceptual photographer and a lot of the more creative kind of techniques. So for a long time that's what I thought I wanted to do, was conceptual photography. So I used a lot of the Alberta landscape to do not only portraits of friends but also the conceptual photography, and I think that kind of seeped into my vision. And There's something about the Alberta landscape and the colors that's just so beautiful and unique, and I think has influenced me a lot as a photographer. So at the end of grade 11 is when I moved to Toronto, and that was a very, I wouldn't say difficult time in my life, but there was a lot of changes. I was in a new school, I didn't have my friends, and I was in a whole new area. So I think for the first kind of 10 months almost that I was here in Toronto, I didn't do a lot of photography. I only did it for my photography class in school. At the end of grade 12, for my photography class, I decided to do a photo series that was conceptual. I really like the idea of the Greek gods showing weaknesses, and I think I like that so much because their stories already show, for me, a lot of human nature in them. It's not like some other gods that are like these almighty beings and they're kind of perfect. The Greek gods, I think, have always held a special place in my heart and kind of connected with me because they are kind of human-like. They do show weaknesses and they do make mistakes. So I wanted to do Poseidon drowning and Athena dying of a battle wound and that kind of thing. So I put together this insane photo series. It was crazy. I got a ton of my friends to take part in it, and it was really, really fun. And so I posted it online, and that's how I discovered the Facebook groups that really took my photography to the next level. During grade 12, I actually also got to do a workshop with David Talley, who is an amazing conceptual photographer, and that really, really pushed my conceptual photography and what inspired me to do the project that I did at the end of grade 12. So at the end of grade 12, I started posting a lot more on Facebook and in photography groups on Facebook, and that's how I really found out that people were actually willing to work with me and wanted to be photographed by me. And these were people that weren't just my friends or my family, they were strangers and they liked my work. So I started posting castings and setting up shoots that summer, and that's kind of where everything took off. So I also took a gap year after grade 12, and that was because I actually have two passions. I really love photography and I also really love creative writing, and I wasn't sure which one I wanted to pursue at university level. So I thought taking a year off would be a great idea for me to kind of explore both in a more in-depth kind of way, and so I really focused on photography and creative writing for an entire year. And so I would work with a lot of models online, and that's also how I started working with makeup artists and stylists. I would set up at least one shoot every week, but most of the time I'd do 2 or 3 shoots in a week, and I would do a lot outside with natural light, and I think that that's how I really started developing a personal style, was by doing a lot of portraits and kind of more fashion-y things. And so that was kind of how I started segueing from more conceptual photography to more kind of fashion and portraiture, because until then I hadn't really loved fashion photography, but I'm not even sure what exactly changed. I think maybe it was working with makeup artists and seeing what they could do, but something shifted in me and I realized that I really, really enjoyed fashion photography as well as conceptual photography. So through that year I progressed a lot. I went from shooting just my friends to shooting online models, and these were complete strangers, and it was such an amazing experience. So at the end of the gap year, I was very fortunate and I got to go to New York and do a workshop with the amazing fashion photographer Emily Soto. I learned so much, and I had done a couple of smaller kind of local workshops throughout the year, just with local Toronto photographers, and that's how I met my first agency, which is Island Models. It's this boutique agency, and I was very lucky that they liked my work, and so I actually got to do shoot with like a ton of their models, and the director of that agency is actually a stylist, so it was some of my first work that had agency standard models and was styled very professionally. And so that was right before the workshop with Emily Soto, And at the workshop with Emily Soto, I obviously got some amazing shots with even more amazing New York models, and on top of that it was styled by an amazing New York stylist. This was the summer of 2016, so by the end of the summer of 2016 I actually had a decent portfolio that I had worked towards all throughout the gap year, and I had some agency standard models with some decent styling, and then the photos from the Emily Soto workshop. So I sent the photos off to a bunch of the agencies here, and I was lucky enough that they liked my work and were willing to let me shoot some of their models, and a big one is Spot 6. So I shot I think 4 of their models in the course of a week and a half, and that's what kind of took my photography to the next level. This is when I started working with a lot more agency standard models, and it was also when I started working with actors. I had met a girl doing some background work for film and television whose brother was an actor on the show Rain. I knew when I met her that my portfolio wasn't amazing yet, it wasn't where I wanted it to be, and so I just kind of back-pocketed that information. I was kind of walking through the street and someone complimented my Wonder Woman lunchbox, and I turned. It was actually one of the actresses on Rain, so I chased her down and had a little conversation with her and totally fangirled because I love that show. And so that kind of reminded me of the connection that I made with the girl doing background work, and I reached out to her to see if her brother wanted to shoot, and he did, so that's how I ended up doing my first shoot with an actor. After that shoot, I reached out to the actress who I'd met on the street, and she also wanted to shoot with me after seeing my portfolio, so I set up a shoot with her, and then it just kind of snowballed from there, and I ended up shooting most of the cast on the show, which was really, really terrific, and it was such a wonderful experience. In the fall of 2016, I started university, and this was while I was shooting a lot of the agency models and the actors, and to be honest, I really didn't like it. OCAD, which is the Ontario College of Art and Design, is the school that I was going to, and I didn't feel like it was a very good fit for me, and I felt like it was holding me back more than it was helping me, which was why over this past Christmas I decided to drop out. So now we are caught up to the present time. I'm continuing to shoot. I have some more time to kind of meet with other agencies, which is what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks, and set up more shoots with kind of local agencies and stylists and models. So I've just been continuing to do what I'm doing, and one of my goals for this year is to submit to a bunch of magazines and try to get my work published as much as possible. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed. And I really made this video to kind of inspire photographers who are just getting started, and to show them that in just 3.5, 4 years, I've come a long, long way. And that if you work really, really hard at photography, you can achieve some amazing results. And it doesn't have to take 10 years to grow a business. And you don't have to be older. You can be a young photographer and still work with agencies and actors. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.